We're ready to start the next session on stage 2 for this day, and it is an eagerly awaited dialogue between Upamanyu Chatterjee and Zac O'Yeah. Let me introduce the panelists for you. Upamanyu Chatterjee, an IAS officer by profession, has written short stories and the novels English August, An Indian Story, The Last Burden, The Memories of the Welfare State, which won the Sahitya Academy Award, Weight Loss and The Way to Go, which was shortlisted for the Hindu Best Fiction Award. In 2008, he was decorated by the French government for his contribution to literature. We also have Zac O'Yeah, who is the Indo-Swedish author of popular comic thrillers Once Upon a Time in Scandinavistan and Mr. Majestic, and 11 other books, and he has been translated into several languages. His latest detective novel, Hurry, A Hero for Hire, has been hailed as a classic. He's also a columnist with the Hindu Business Line and an influential literary critic. Can I request the authors to come and take the stage and bring to us a dialogue we've all been looking forward to. Thank you. Please turn off your mobile phones, and those who are standing, if you could please take seats, that would be lovely.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Well, yeah. We have just my one mic. If it's okay with you, I'll start with reading out a short story that I can hear someone yelling at the back. That was published earlier this year in Granta. It depends on how it goes. Maybe I'll read for 10 minutes or so, and then we could initiate some kind of conversation. The short story is called Othello Sucks. And, well, it's about Othello Sucks. Okay, here we go. This being at some moments a piece of non-fiction, at others a radio play, and at yet others a comic strip in prose, Father, one of its four principal dramatis personae, feels that the title is incomplete without a colon. Othello sucks, colon, and then an apposite phrase from Shakespeare's play. The radio play starts with younger daughter at dinner, spitting out the title without looking up from reading her mobile phone. No one responds. Othello sucks does not even register with either mother or elder daughter. Chomp, chomp, slurp, slurp, gas. Father is in four minds. He does not want to be distracted from his khichdi with meatballs, or his meditations on his indigestion, or his plans on what to take in his tiffin tomorrow. Yet not to respond to a cry for help would be churlish. Younger daughter would then flounce back to her room, slam the door shut so hard on her family that it would once more bring down plaster from the ceiling. In a chain reaction, the trembling of the entire building would, in turn, trigger the frenzied barking of the three Great Danes in the apartment 2 floors above. Thus, Father, airily, well, who doesn't in this world? Prompting from younger daughter, a torrent. Well, if it's English, no one in class can follow it. You did wish that I would make her turn Sir, she can turn and yet go on, and turn again, and she can weep, sir, weep. And she's obedient, as you say, obedient, very obedient, unquote. The lines sound like gobbledygook, so you read the notes and learn that turn also means pursue sexual encounters, and obedient also means sexually pliant. So then the lines make sense, but big deal, it simply isn't worth the effort. And the boys go around saying, Miss, make me your obedient servant. You dig deep for all that meaning, and all you come up with is a potato, and I have a class test tomorrow on it, and I'll fail, and I won't get an excellence award this year. Noises off of plaster falling, while mother, coldly, how competitive you've made them. An elder daughter in a daze, as though remembering September 11, I had the Merchant of Venice, in not more than 500 words, explain which of the gold, silver, and lead caskets you find the most screamingly boring. Compared to that, a retarded black guy who sucks is a rock concert. Whose bright idea is it to subject the children in this day and age and clime and country to Shakespeare is an issue that father has raised at several parent-teacher meetings. He'd thought that the school, being a good right-wing South Delhi Punjabi institution, would be receptive, but it has turned out to be as deaf as the regulars around the dining table at home. But he has persevered. Shakespeare is not on the Central Board exam syllabus, then why the hell? I mean, do we want them as adults to speak in iambic pentameter when they apply for internships to CNN, IBN? No, grammatically correct and lucid English, that's what we want. Think Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady. Indefatigable Mrs. Dashgupta, the language skills teacher, in response suggests that he come and give a talk to the senior classes on which English do we want to learn, the relevance of Shakespeare to India in the 21st century. She is renowned, says elder daughter, for roping in parents to lessen her own work. She sucks. At the thought of father performing in front of her classmates, younger daughter stops going to school. No one notices. She also begins to be markedly absent from the dining table. Her 3-hour karaoke sessions in the bathroom, however, continue. Father begins reading up for his lecture and is soon an irritable wreck. For beneath his own babble, he is actually shocked by how dull and dim-witted he finds Othello the personality to be, and pompous. Pompous and dull and dim-witted because he is black. That is what Shakespeare has made him out to be. How could any reader ignore that? The bugger is as embarrassing, he tells the bathroom mirror while flossing, as Hari Jamset Ram Singh, and about as funny. But one is black and the other brown. Same thing. Noble princes both. One beggar merely duskier than the other. Or is it me? Am I just rereading the play at the wrong time? And is it meant for younger people of another country? O thou dull Moor. Am I sure I know exactly what a Moor is? Abibe Bakila isn't a Moor, is he? And Anwar Sadat, but not Kenneth Kaunda, is that it? Berbers, Mauritanians, shrieks, younger daughter in response over the music and through the shut doors of her bathroom and her bedroom, including Mauritanians. No one reacts. The cat continues to doze on the tea cozy at the center of the dining table, and mother to inspect the screen of her laptop and curse the internet service provider. After a moment, elder daughter elaborates with a smirk. There's a black guy in her class whom I think she has a crush on. That's how she knows the little that she knows. Into the conversation at the dining table enter Jake, Luigi, Fall. I'll stop there. I'll stop there and maybe we can take questions.
Yes, I would recommend you all to read this whole story. You can find it in an issue of Granta that came earlier this year. And did your mic stop working? It works, no? Because I hope you'll answer some questions now. I have a few questions I wanted to take up with Upamanyu, and I hope you in the audience also will be interested in asking him questions, because it's not often that we have him reading and speaking to us here in Bangalore or in South India for that matter. Anyway, so this story, Othello Sucks, it speaks a lot about nationality and language and skin color, and at one point you also said that, Othello in your story is described as pompous, dull, and dim-witted because he's black. So what prompted you to meditate on these things in this story?
This is not, it's a kind of parody of a real life situation. It was prompted by a series of events 3 or 4 years ago at home where the children were studying Shakespeare in school and hating it. And me, older generation, I said, what nonsense, and he's just taught so badly in your school, and Macbeth is wonderful. And they in particular hated both The Merchant of Venice and Othello. That part of it is true when the school did say that why don't you come and talk to them about Othello. And I did reread Othello, and it was actually dreadful.
Oh, really?
It's a dreadful play, yeah. And it's true, at one point I say that, the black Othello sucks because the bard is white. It's absolutely true, I think. He just can't do blacks. And that's the germ. This is not the right place to read because concentration is difficult for all of you. I can understand that. But where the hell is it?
I hope you all had the coffee before this session, because we're going to get very intellectual.
Yeah, this is going to be an intellectual session, that's true. Shakespeare is white and his audience is white, and don't you forget it. For 2 centuries he has been used as a whitening agent for the colonial mind, bleaching powder, if you will. Read him as white, for the poet of all humanity is fiction and does not exist. Black Othello sucks because the bard behind him is white. Something I thought was absolutely true. As it is, it's very difficult to do people of another race, or it's difficult to do them seriously. And it's always boggled my mind that Othello is really considered one of his great plays. Iago is a great creation, but the play itself, I thought, it sucks.
Also, later in the story, you take up a couple of examples where I think these must be authentic examples, where you have some staging of the play and somebody in the audience gets so offended by Othello's actions that he actually shoots the actor, who is a white actor with a face painted black. But even then, it's that offensive. Is it really actually?
No, those are actual quotations. I quote Laurence Olivier saying how he painted himself black to play Othello. I should. This is going to be. I'll have to break and read from this. Okay, just these 2 paras. It is again Czech who points out in class that white audiences being disturbed by Othello's blackness was, is, will be a global phenomenon. He quotes Stendhal recounting an incident that occurred in the August of 1822. Quote, last year the soldier standing guard at the interior of the theater in Baltimore, seeing Othello, who in the fifth act of the tragedy of that name was going to kill Desdemona, cried out, it will never be said that in my presence a damned black would kill a white woman. At that moment, the soldier fired his gun and broke the arm of the actor who played Othello. Playing Othello, therefore, has proved dangerous for some white actors, even when they, for a protective shield, have painted themselves blacker than jet. And exactly how black do they consider Othello to be? Here is Laurence Olivier in his autobiography dated 1986. Quote, black all over my body, max factor 2880, then a lighter brown, then Negro number 2, a stronger brown, brown on black to give a rich mahogany, then the great trick, that glorious half yard of chiffon with which I polished myself all over until I shone, the lips blueberry, the tight curled wig, the white of the eyes whiter than ever, and the black sheen that covered my flesh and bones, glistening in the dressing room lights. I am Othello, unquote. Or Enid Blyton's Mr. Golly, a tragic gollywog given to histrionics and hyperbole, an old black ram, a Barbary horse who, gullible and garrulous, murders an innocent woman and then commits suicide. Well, why not? Even gollywogs have souls. Being black, a lot of soul. So it's most of the quotations in the story are true. I mean, I haven't made any of them up, and I just contrast that with the comedy of getting these normal South Delhi kids to read this atrocious play. So,
but yeah, the story actually makes a very surprising rereading of Shakespeare, and that I mean, we tend to think of Shakespeare as such a great, good writer. But what's your own intellectual relationship to Shakespeare?
No, I mean, no. It's like saying, you know, what do you think about God? No, it's something we've, you know, if you've ever suffered English, you study him all the time. But the nice thing about getting away from that English world and then getting back to it from the outside is that you read all these things in a completely different light. You read them as you would read a modern novel, and you'd say, "My, this is junk." I mean, then I think you're able to, time is short. You don't want to be immersed in junk, and you say, "Well, this is really junk." But you wouldn't say that obviously for the other plays. But this one in particular, and I thought it was worth writing a short story about.
Actually, thinking of it, Shakespeare was a bit of a pulp writer of his time, because he wrote really to please the audience and to get like greater numbers of audience to his theaters, no, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm no authority. Yeah, but that's true. Yeah.
So, well, in the end of your story about language, the communication between the family members is kind of reduced to SMS messages, which is kind of hilarious how they sort of sort out their problems through SMSing each other, although they are in the same room, in the same house. Do you think that literature too will one day become SMS based? Like many authors already have their greatest output of production is like through tweets, I think. Yeah. And I've heard that there's a new publishing house set up called Juggernaut, where they estimate that the largest chunk of their books are going to be produced for mobile phone reading, for example.
Well, I think you're asking the wrong person, because I can barely make out the difference between Twitter, blog, Facebook. We
That's God's voice, no?
we I mean, I'm not sure this is related, but we don't have TV at home, so that helps a lot in conversation. Not that we converse a lot at home, but no, we are far away from that SMS stuff. But in the story, they are talking to each other via the mobile phone because there's such loud music playing that they can't hear each other.
But like, I mean, your output is roughly one book in 5 years or something like that, isn't it?
It was meant, when I started in '88, it was meant to coincide with each Olympics, but didn't work out. I'm several Olympics too late, I think. Yeah.
But I'm thinking like 5 years from now, when your new book is ready to be out and your publisher, suppose they ask you to make it more SMS friendly or mobile phone friendly, what would your reaction be?
Oh, you know, it's I mean, even when I send SMSs, they're long, grammatically correct sentences. I can't do it. I just can't, I can't misspell words deliberately and drop the vowels and things. It's a problem.
And an SMS book from you would have to be like in 3 million installments or something like that, because your books are never too short.
Yeah, well, I can't. I know people do it, but I just.
I was thinking of one other thing while reading. Also, recently I've been reading Upamanyu's latest book called Fairy Tales at 50.
Yeah, and you notice he hasn't finished it.
No, I finished it. I've just gone back to reread some parts, and I recommend you all to get a signed copy at the end of the session.
Yeah, so do I.
Because it's actually we'll both sign our books for free. I mean, you'll have to pay the publisher something for the book itself, but the signature is totally free of charge. Anyway, so I was thinking like, there's one thing, what I love about your novels is that you have this delight in words, like in this latest book, you have a fellow who has a halitotic breath. I was just thinking like, how you turn halitosis into an adjective like so beautifully, and I would have never thought of such a thing. I mean, how does your mind work?
What do you mean? It exists as a word.
Yeah.
Why do you use this word and not another?
But it's like, to me it seemed very advanced. I mean, I would have written like bad breath.
Yeah. That's true, halitotic sounds nice, but
But
you can't use bad breath as an adjective.
Right.
Anyway, you can't.
But obviously you must be having a lot of fun when you're writing your book and thinking up like.
Well, I guess I suppose you could call it fun. Yeah, it's I mean, I like writing. If that's what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, do you spend a lot of time finding the exactly right word for these things?
Yeah, I'm sure we all do. I mean, not all of us, not the SMS types, but I'm sure you do too.
Well, some people say that like one should use the simplest word possible to make it easier for the readers, and publishers sometimes suggest that you should not have too many syllables because people might fall asleep if they read
that's always possible.
long word.
But one shouldn't listen too much to publishers. That's one thing, and then you should. Well, if you're satisfied with the sentence, then you let it go, and if you're not satisfied, you don't.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so in your latest novel, if we talk about it for a little while, it's kind of an slightly bleak story, although very comical, and at times it's sort of cynical and nihilistic almost. But it also seems that although it's set in a contemporary time, there are some hints towards Buddhist tales from like 2,500 years back. How did you arrive at this Buddha theme?
Yeah, it's in that one long sentence you've touched upon most of the stuff that went into writing fairy tales. It's contemporary. It's not You pick on the cliches um, of the world of fairy tales and then try and put them into a contemporary context, see how that looks. But the violence and the rest of it are just from, are from our lives. I mean, we live in a world where, people are beheaded on Facebook, so you can't get worse than that. So, in fact, I was quite bemused to read reviews that, that said that it's so shocking and disgusting and so on. And why don't we just have, romantic fiction instead? I mean, that kind of stuff. But, it takes all sorts to make a readership. It's okay.
Yeah. But like, how come you went to a religious figure like the Buddha for inspiration?
Well, the Buddhist mythology is a huge source of very rich folk and fairy tales, folk tales more than fairy tales, and the one single folk tale that I used, the story of Angulimala, was appropriate for the book. I mean, here is a serial killer. It just seemed appropriate, and the rest of it seemed to follow because as you know only too well, there are certain things you have to include so that the plot is rounded off.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that actually moved me a lot when I was reading fairy tales at 50 is this whole thing about being 50 or turning 50, especially since I myself am heading in that direction sooner rather than later. And I'll just read one excerpt that I thought was really funny. This is a glimpse of one of the characters in the book who has just turned 50. Being fed up, moreover, was of no use at all, because even during the process of acknowledging to oneself that one's body had slipped and was slipping farther downhill, getting up twice a night to piss and no sleep thereafter, sitting down on the commode to pee because so fucking groggy that couldn't aim correctly standing. Once or twice had even nodded off while on the WC. And no sudden movements while sliding downhill, not at 50. No lunging for the shuttlecock, for example, at badminton. Pretty soon thereafter, no badminton. No lunging for pretty backsides either. The last time he tried, he'd, like the buffalo, farted so unexpectedly, loudly and whirringly that it sounded like the mixie in the kitchen. Some aging animals wandered off into some damned hole in the wilderness to die in dignity and peace. I mean, it was almost like reading the story of my own life.
Well, I understand turning 60 is much worse. So.
Oh, it'll just get worse, no? Oh, that's a reassuring thought. We at least know where we're heading. But did you have some kind of crisis at 50 that prompted you to write these kind of things?
It sounds silly, but it's a nice title, if I may say so. If no one else is saying so, you know how it is. You have a title, then you say, what else can you push into in the book so that it holds together even better.
So the book started with the title, and then you had to make up the rest.
Half and half. There's a title. There's that Angulimala story. Right. There is also. I shouldn't be rude about these classics, but I don't know if you've read Mark Twain's *The Prince and the Pauper*, which is a very nice idea, and it's just such a bad book. And you keep thinking, if you have twins and one is rich and one is poor, and they change places, it could be such fun, and it's just so dull. And here too, there are these lookalikes who live in different worlds. So all that is put together, gives you and then you develop some of the themes and some you just let go.
Yeah. It's a classical Bollywood theme also, these twins
So I'm
separated at
waiting
birth.
for someone to, but without songs and stuff. But it's difficult. I can't imagine having. I mean, maybe you could have songs while this guy is murdering someone. But
Yeah, when he chops off those fingers, no, that Anguli Mala makes his necklace of fingers. Imagine if he did it dancing and singing.
it's food for thought. Yeah.
Mm. But no offer from Bollywood yet.
Not yet. Not, but
But let's hope.
Yeah.
It'll probably come soon. One thing about your characters is also that they seem to be like in a perpetual angst, and at some point I was hoping that maybe growing older would relieve them of angst, but it just seems to get worse.
yeah.
Is that
You
your
know,
view?
well, I learned several years ago that angst is just a sort of fancy German word for anxiety. And when you say angst, it sounds, literary. But when you say anxiety, it just sounds dull. But, we are all anxious. I mean, unless you are retarded, you can't not be anxious. I'm already anxious about leaving the hotel tomorrow to catch the flight to Delhi because, I thought Bombay and Delhi traffic were bad, but,
I'm really sorry about Bangalore traffic. On behalf of the whole city, I apologize.
I accept you apologize, but it's not enough. Nothing moves anyway. But that's angst for you. Is that enough as an answer? Or angst as a kind of philosophical position. Yeah, but you can't not be anxious in the modern world. I think.
Considering what goes on around us.
Yeah, and how badly the cricket is, and it's a disgrace, this cricket match, man.
Right. But 50, it's also the age when good Hindus ought to begin the third quarter of their lives, isn't it?
No, is it divided? Is it divided so clearly? You know nothing.
Isn't it?
Is it?
Or
No.
Isn't
That's
it like
arbitrary.
every 25 years you need
No,
to shift your approach?
No, it's as far as I know, it's arbitrary. You just decide when you want to stop studying, and then you stop being a brahmachari and you marry, and then when your children want to get rid of you, that's when you go into
Vanaprastha. They send you into the forest.
Yeah.
In the coconut jungle.
If you're lucky, because otherwise it's usually some horrible
Right.
dry, arid forest in central India. There's nothing. Some Naxals, that's all.
But maybe at that point you can join the Naxal.
Yeah. You need to know how to fire a gun, though.
Well, okay, the other thing is that authors are supposed to be young and promising until they're 50 or 60 or so. Isn't it? As an author, one remains younger longer than other people. Like other people are supposed to stop being young and promising at around 25, but as an author, you can still sort of be struggling when you're in your late 50s.
Yeah, struggling till in your late 50s sounds very accurate, but apart from that, it's a mug's game, actually. People write books that are recognized or admired 3 centuries later. And so stop looking at your watch. We could ask, if someone wants to.
Is there any questions from the audience? You'll be welcome to join.
Depends on the question. Otherwise, not welcome. Yeah.
But there's one gentleman here and one lady in the front.
Without a
who has
mic.
question. Is there a mic going around, or am I? There's one question. I'll do.
I'm kidding. This is
We have so many volunteers, no? Then I don't have to volunteer. Thank you.
No. Sir, your discussion was very highly scintillating discussion, and I am Bhaskar Rao from Andhra Pradesh, but I settled here. I'll ask 1 or 2 questions which I dot. Number 1 is, you dealt with black and white business in the whole of Shakespearean drama. Okay. I have got another observation that Shylock was introduced in As You Like It, 3,000 ducats and all that. That is a religious controversy was introduced into the dramas by Shakespeare. What do you say to that? It is Jews versus Christians, or what it is? Number two, you have got a great poet like a dramatist like this Shakespeare, wonderful. But there are many people who say that these are not his originals, but Mr. Molière has written it. What do you say to that? And secondly, you have got a lot of very highly controversial murders in the dramas. Are you going to do anything about it? Julius Caesar was killed by Brutus, to Brutus. And all these dramas were very highly popular. Are you going to do anything with that? And because you talked about the Shakespeare, I thought it fit to have your views on this matter.
Thank you. No, Shylock is a very interesting character, but I think he's many moneylenders at that time were traditionally Jewish, and in The Merchant of Venice, when he, it's a nice passage. When you prick us, do we not bleed, etc. Is really one of Shakespeare's great creations, I think. What else? I'm sorry.
The murders, no?
I have asked you about
murders
in the Julius Caesar, the way he has done it.
Yeah, very nice, I thought. Yeah.
Brutus has really done it. And are you going to ban all these dramas now?
Very nice. In fact, what's interesting is what I found interesting was the murders done on stage and the murders done off stage.
Yes, Joe Pandler.
Because the assassination of Julius Caesar at the Capitol was the single most well-known fact about Roman history that Shakespeare's audiences would have known. It's the fulcrum around which that play is staged, and it's actually marvelously done because, till the assassination, it's actually well structured, very tight, conversations in darkness. And then after the assassination, it's like the body politic falling apart. All the rest of the play crumbles into pieces. I think it's one of his underrated plays. It's actually marvelous, and it's always being compared to Antony and Cleopatra, which it shouldn't be because Antony and Cleopatra is a different kind of play altogether. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but on the other hand, since in Macbeth, the murder takes place off stage because he doesn't want that central character, who's after all a villain, he doesn't want the audience to lose sympathy with him. And if you actually show X killing Y, you tend to lose sympathy for X because it's a horribly brutal act. So that takes place off stage, and he comes on later and says, "I've done the deed." It's marvelously done. It's horribly presumptuous to actually comment on his plays as a whole, but I just chose Othello because it's really a problem play. That's all.
I think we have one lady in the front row who wants to ask a question, and a gentleman at the far side.
Upamanyu, this is about actually to continue this theme of how the black was represented, or how the Jewish person, and in Shakespeare's plays as well as in the famous comic series Tintin and Hergé, by Hergé, and in Enid Blyton, since you mentioned all these. would you agree that that the era of political correctness that we are in now makes us sometimes view them in retrospect a little differently, and we tend to forget the sheer delight and the populism, as Zac was pointing out, that say Shakespeare enjoyed at his time, or Hergé till today, and Enid Blyton till today. Would you say that this whole stereotype, and I include Bollywood as well, the Gujarati, the South Indian, the Marathi, there are all these ridiculous or ridiculed stereotypes. Isn't that shouldn't that be a natural passage of reading and literature? That there were things that why do we tend to view everything through a politically correct prism today? I mean, many of Hergé's comics have been reworked and re-engineered. Tintin in the Congo and things like that. So, what is your opinion? Both your opinions actually on stereotypes and political correctness.
It's an interesting question. Even Agatha Christie's that novel called "And Then There Was None." I mean, that is what it's called
10
today.
Little Niggers, yeah.
It was used to be called 10 Little Niggers in the beginning. So, obviously.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, but this is you're right. It's after this is post facto. I mean, it's you're politically more correct today, so you look back on an era that was less politically correct, and you say, "Oh my God, he's done blacks very badly." But there have been productions of Othello where Othello is white, and the rest of the cast is black. He's still a very dumb guy. Now, all that I was trying to say was that as part of a story, this is not, the short story is not a critical text. It's a story after all. But part of it certainly suggests that, white writing about white and calling him dumb is fine. White writing about black and calling him dumb and clearly indicating or implying that he's dumb because he's black, I find very, very odd. And then you have these centuries of public reaction. Coleridge, Charles Lamb, Stendhal, saying that it's outrageous that a black man could grab a white woman. And at the end of it, especially in the suicide, in the murder scene when he strangles Desdemona, that caused outrage apparently each time it was done on stage in the 17th, more in the 18th and 19th centuries. But in modern times, you would be very conscious of this. And there have been attempts to poeticize Othello's character and make him this kind of great romantic intellectual. I think it's only my opinion, it falls flat. It's a little different, I think, for Hergé because it's a comic strip. And you would, by definition, read a comic differently. I'd say that, okay, it's a comic. He has, Tintin meets cliches in every comic. Cigar smoking Americans in Tintin in America, or Congo in Tintin in Tibet. When he goes through India, he meets. So, but to me, it matters much less somehow in Hergé because it's a comic strip. It's not something that would bother me. But this one did because it's after all Shakespeare. So.
As a writer, I think I don't mind at all if books and literary works are rewritten and adapted to new times, because it seems like almost like an organic and necessary process for literature to change. We can't read the books that were written in those times and understand them the way they were understood by their audience. So, I think it's a very interesting and slightly controversial thing, but on the whole, we need to kind of adapt our literary treasures for new readerships and new ways of understanding them and changing them. There was a question from the gentleman.
Hello, thank you very much for the engrossing presentation. This is with regards to Shakespeare as a, metaphorically speaking, bleaching agent, which you had mentioned. I have three questions. First is this bleaching agent, or whitening agent, very specific to Indian context, where in mid-19th century the English education was embraced by the rising bourgeoisie, or is it across the Commonwealth in different parts of British Empire? My second question is, as the epicenter of, shall I say, Anglophone power shifted from London to Washington in post-Second World War, did it impact on the notion of Shakespeare as part of the English-speaking civilization? And how much of Shakespeare today is taught in British, the motherland of English language, in the school curriculum? How are they negotiating? Because my impression is it is a lot of it is about tourism, you know, the 400th anniversary celebrated in Stratford Globe Theatre. And lastly, India is going to have the largest number of English speakers. So in many ways, again, the epicenter of English-speaking civilization is moving towards India. And can Shakespeare act as the way Italian Renaissance literature act in Britain as an inspiration for their own literature? So how Indians will negotiate with Shakespeare, because this is going to be one of the largest English-speaking country. Thank you.
This is clearly meant for you.
No, I think this was meant for you. I mean, you're the one with the brain.
Any takers in the audience? Yes. No, I don't know. I'm not a historian, so I really, and frankly, I don't care what happens to Shakespeare.
And also, this discussion is very much about Shakespeare. I mean, maybe we should talk
what about us?
Upamanyu and his novels. Are there any questions about any of Upamanyu's books?
There's a young
One
lady
gentleman
there who's just raised a placard saying 10.
We have 10 more minutes of this delightful conversation. So let's move on from Shakespeare to more exciting things.
Can I ask a non-literary question?
Well, it depends, because if it's sort of, it depends. Okay.
If it's intimate, you may not ask it. But if it's non-intimate.
Yeah, you decide. What were you asked in your IAS interview, and how eloquent you were in convincing them that you should be get through that interview?
Yeah, that's meant for you. This, that's a long time ago. I did very badly in the interview, but I can't remember. They asked me, actually I do remember, they asked me whether the compulsory shifting of the slums from Turkman Gate in Delhi to South Delhi was necessitated by the issue was the price of development, and whether whether it was worth it. And in this long-winded way, I answered that I had no idea. So it didn't go down very well. But as I said, I didn't do very well in the interview.
I have a follow-up question to this one. Actually, in two of your novels, English August, which is probably a favorite novel of most of you, and which was also made into an acclaimed movie, and another novel called The Memories of the Welfare State, you have an IAS officer protagonist called Agastya Sen. And he's kind of, a lot of what he thinks and does is, it doesn't exactly present like the most rosy picture of life in the IAS, the Indian Administrative Service. Have your colleagues read and commented on these books, and have they do people think that these are autobiographical books, or do they understand that it's literature?
You should ask them. I have no idea. But
you don't get feedback from.
Well, they wanted. When it first came out, they wanted free copies. But this is a long time ago. This is really 1988. So, and I remember telling a journalist that I don't exactly the same thing. I don't know their views because they're waiting for free copies, and apparently they were outraged. But anyway, that's a long time ago. English August is really about feeling out of place in your own country, about the two Indias. And this business of plucking an out completely urbanized, anglicized, anglophone young man and throwing him into the boondocks is served perfectly well by this device of, civil service training. I mean, why else would a guy go there, feel blue, and yet have to remain there? And actually, it's in the book. Nothing happens to him, and that's obviously part of the plot. But in a real, in real life, in a year of training, you actually don't have time to breathe. There's a drought, and there's a communal riot, and you have to meet development targets and so on. So it's actually quite time-consuming and taxing, and you have to spend hours, and literally hours per day in a jeep.
Right.
All that is weeded out because it was important to establish that he has nothing to do, and therefore he has moments of self-awareness. So it's really not an accurate picture of the civil service in small town India. But when the reviews came out, they just, people liked the book because it seemed to be a satire on the bureaucracy. Who was I to object?
Any more questions for Upamanyu?
Hi, Upamanyu. Can I get back to Othello?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, how much possessive were the British regarding the black character who was dumb, as you said? Because I would like to recollect an incident in 1848, 10 years before the Sepoy Mutiny. Othello was staged in Calcutta. And for the first time, a native Bengali actor was supposed to play the title role, Babu Vaishnav Charan Addi. And the East India Company soldiers revolted, they didn't take part in that play, and as a result, the play stopped after 2 shows. There were bad reviews in the newspapers, which were mostly controlled by the Englishmen that time. So I guess they are like kind of possessive about the black character which was created by a white man. Is this true?
Yeah, possibly. I didn't know this, otherwise I would have loved to include it in the story. But
Any further questions?
Yeah, I don't know anything about Othello, so my question is about English August, and thank you for writing that. It was a Bible for my generation. And
also mine.
What do you think Agastya would think about this intolerance thing which is going on?
Which, you mean this new thing? Awful things happen in India every day. You can't deny that. It just horrendous things. You just read the newspapers every day. You say, my God, what kind of world are we living in? But it sounds a little cynical to say that this is just part of a series of awful things that go on, all year round. But it's true. Those who said that, no one returned an award after the anti-Sikh riots in 1984 have a point. After the blindings in Bhagalpur, after those series of Dalits being killed all over the country every now and then. There are horrible things that happen every day in India. But I'm not sure Augustus Sen is a very political person. I don't think he reads newspapers.
We have one, more questions.
You talked about color prejudice. And Zac exhibited some ageist prejudices. Anyway, does an author have social responsibilities? Must he exhibit that in his books?
Sorry, does an author have?
Does an author have a social responsibility?
Well, it depends. What do you mean? He just has a story to tell and some views to reflect in the story, if at all. He he might actually have no views on the world around him, or those views might be completely at variance with the views of other people. It depends. Social responsibility is I'm not. It's not a phrase I'm comfortable with.
But a novel, I mean, as you can see, it's a kind of a very thick piece of writing. Can be a very useful tool for a social introspection or to study or explore social circumstances. So I think like all novelists, whether we're conscious of it or not, we do have a certain social, we may not have consciously, but we do take on a certain social responsibility in the way that we choose our themes to write about and things that seem important enough for us to put down in fiction. Because if we didn't feel that something was important to put down in fiction, we wouldn't spend all those years it takes to write a book as thick as the books that we write. Don't you think?
Yes and no, but social, I mean, in the sense that most of it, or rather a very large chunk of it, is padding just to get the book story going.
And the publishers expect a certain number of pages.
If you're, and the padding had better be good, in the sense that, there's no point in stealing chunks from other paras from Frontline or something just to fill out that. But, you need, if you say that if you're going to describe, for example, the traffic in Bangalore, I don't know if you're socially responsible, what you could say about it that, I mean, you can't say anything about it that's nice. So I'm just trying to figure out what, I'm still trying to figure out the question. Do you mean you should criticize all the time? Not so sure. Or do you mean?
It just means that do you have a sense of responsibility that I must communicate certain ideas to my audience?
Yeah, of course. That naturally, yeah.
And I must do it in such a way that it's not something that I do not manipulate my audience. I don't push my ideas down in convoluted fashions and so on.
Well, no, in the sense one presumes that the audience is intelligent, and they either like it or they don't. If they just find that this is boring, and lots of people find my books boring, so they tend to skip paras in the middle that sound heavy. It's part of the give and take between reader and writer, I think.
I just wanted to know.
Can we just keep that a little short?
Yeah,
Chris?
just wanted to know who your favorite author is from both of you.
That's you. I mean, he is my favorite author.
But he's making me blush. No, I haven't read enough. I've read. I like single. I like single works by. I like particular books, but I can't think of one author and say, okay, this is it.
Hello, I'm sitting right here next to you.
In fact, the only one I've read enough of and I really love is James Hadley Chase, but you can't admit to that in public. I mean, what the hell?
Okay, last question before we close this session. Upamanyu, will you sign a copy of your book for me? And
with
I'm
pleasure.
Sure he'll sign for all the rest of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a lovely, engaging session. We'll take a short 5-minute break before we come back for a session called War and Peace in Verse.